yeah.
Yeah, you didn't send Gilbert out my way.
But he's just gonna be fishing. You know, that's all.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this our meeting to order here this morning of the Advisory Board of Athletic Trainers for the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. Thank you for giving your time and being here this morning. First thing I need to do is have a roll call and certification of our quorum of our advisory board. So Brittany Webb.
Here.
Dr. David Smith.
Here.
Daryl Gaines.
Here.
Michael Fitch.
Here.
And I am the presiding officer, and I'm also present. We do have all 5 of our board members. Thank you guys for being here, ladies and lady. And I do certify that we do have a quorum and can take on and do the official business that we are supposed to do today. So thank you very much. At this point in time, I'd like to introduce the staff in the room and have you guys introduce and give us your function. I know many of you will be giving reports throughout our meeting, and some of you for some special recognition. But this is basically staff introductions, please. So.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Mike Harris-Menace. I'm the chairman for the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation.
Carla James, Deputy Executive Director, TDLR.
Mary Winston, attorney for Office of Strategic Communication, and I serve the advisory boards as one of my functions.
Molly Feudel, Assistant General Counsel.
I'm Karen Merriman. I am Carla James, Executive Assistant.
Robert Reyes, representing the Enforcement Division.
Ray Pizarro, Director for Education Examination Division.
Rebecca Adamus, Education Liaison for the Education Examination Division. Dee Dee McKeecher, Director of Licensing Division. Heather Muir, Manager of Regulatory Program Management, Medical and Health Professions Section.
Leonard Rivas, Licensing Manager for the Medical and Health Professions Group.
Okay.
April Nahas, the Licensing and Health Professions.
Doug Van Pelt, Office of Strategic Communication. Swan Williams, Manager for Customer Service.
Sheila Manch, Public Information Officer.
Stuart Meyer, Regulatory Program Management.
Okay, did I get all staff that are present? Okay.
Stevie Fair, Health Professions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. You tried to hide behind Leonard and behind the post, and it worked.
Mr. Chairman, we have about 400 people online streaming if you'd like for them to send in their names also.
Sure. I'd hope that we would finish this meeting quicker than that, but feel free. Thank you guys for joining us this morning, and we hope you learned some things about the workings of the Athletic Trainer Board this morning. So without, to my knowledge, I do want to move the agenda just briefly. We do have some very special guests and a special recognition. And you guys, this is an open meeting and open to the public, so not at all excusing you, but allowing you to leave unless you want to learn a lot about open meetings rules and Administrative Procedures Acts and Public Information Acts, in case you ever want to run for public office yourself in your location, your city. Important information there, but if you don't, I want to allow you to be able to step away, step out of the room if you want to after this recognition. So, with that being said, I'm going to move to item F and allow this special recognition to occur. Back this last fall, don't have the exact date in front of me. I'm sure you guys have the date. October 22nd. One of the coaches at Longview, Coach Ken Jernigan, who is a cross-country coach, collapsed. And the two athletic trainers that were, one of the athletic trainers was notified, and ultimately they both responded that Coach Jernigan had collapsed and needed immediate assistance. And so, with that being said, they were summoned to the scene. I think one grabbed an AED, one went directly to the scene and immediately began to work the emergency code and start CPR and to save this gentleman's life. And certainly they are credited with the quick action, their training, their education that they had done. And, it's as athletic trainers and as an individual that has had to do this well before, you go through the training, but you never know how you're going to respond when you're put under the fire. And obviously you ladies were well trained and you responded quickly and efficiently, because this gentleman and his family are able to be here today to recognize this. So I'm going to step over to the podium and allow Chairman Arismeer to make any comments he wants to. Also, Coach Jernigan to make any comments, and then we would like to present you ladies with a couple certificates for your efforts and as an achievement which you've done, and then we'll also like to take a couple pictures with you as a board. For you all that are watching out in live stream land or out around the world, we will, after we make our presentation, I'm going to call for a quick recess. And so if you see us go away and black a screen, our meeting will come back to order just as soon as pictures and things are done, and then we will resume our business of the day. So just to kind of give you a heads up, that's what we're going to do.
Thank you, Chairman Ware. My name is Mike Arismeer. I'm the chairman for the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. I had the pleasure of having dinner last night with Coach Ken Jernigan and his wife, Debbie. Actually, I've made it a very known fact. I was going to say little known fact, but it's now very known. Coach Jernigan was my high school track coach. Yeah, exactly. So that was about 10 years ago we figured out? So it has been quite a while. He actually came out of college, and where I went to school at Klondike was his very first coaching. And so it's funny because last night as we were reminiscing, we were talking about the workouts, and I told him a story about my daughter who had got put in to run a 200, never ran in her life, and so she was going to run it at the district track meet, and she was, I believe, in 8th grade. Didn't know what she was going to do, so I said, well, I'm going to go out and work with you. So we went out, and then it's like it all came flashing back. I was telling her to make sure you bring your arms across, when you're on the curve, and when you come out, run straight, and make sure you don't have your fence clinched up. Little things like that I learned from Coach Jernigan. And so it's amazing how it all came back. We didn't quite remember the workouts the same. He said that when we ran, he made us run 20 200s and a timed. He said he was very lenient on that. I don't remember it that way, but it was great catching up with him. It was great to be able to visit with him. He told me the story about what took place on that day, and let me tell you, it's a very amazing God thing story. If you sit down and have the opportunity to be able to visit with Coach Jernigan about it, we talked about how it all occurred, what happened, about the heroes. Of course, we're recognizing Deidre and Kristen today for what they did and their quick saving actions to be able to save Coach Jernigan. There's other heroes that were involved that were a part of it. There was a couple of high school girls that didn't panic and went and sought help, went and got the coach. And so everyone really kind of pitched in to be able to help and to save Coach Jernigan. And so for that, we want to recognize what he has done and being able to come forward and be able to tell his story. But more than anything else, we want to recognize Deidre and Kristen for their actions. I believe that Kristen was from Kansas. Is that correct? Graduated from Washburn in 2015. She's been with Longview now for a couple of years. Deidre actually was been in the industry now for 14 years. It's been at Longview for about 10. And it's amazing. She came from South Dakota. I'm trying to figure out how she got to Texas from South Dakota. But that's probably a different story.
Warm up.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably correct. So they talk about how it's at kind of the end of the day, ready for from football practice, and they came in from running, and then Coach collapsed. And through their quick saving actions, they were able to revive him, get EMS called, and they saved his life. And it's amazing how when you think about athletic trainers, people need to know it's not just about wrapping ankles. That's not what it is. It's much more than that. It's life-saving procedures that they have to know, and they have to be ready to use it in an instant. They have to be ready to use it in a heartbeat, and literally a heartbeat. So for that, we want to congratulate Kristen, want to congratulate Deidre for what they've done. I've actually, when I found out what this story was, I had been getting information from our staff concerning the life-saving measures that you two performed. I had been keeping up with Debbie Jernigan, Ken Jernigan's wife, about Coach Jernigan having a procedure done, medical procedure. It wasn't until about a month ago that these two paths crossed. I didn't know that they were all coinciding together. So it's amazing how that happened. The moment we found out we were going to recognize you two, I called. Actually, I got a hold of Coach Jernigan and said, we're going to recognize them. If you can be there, great. If you send a video, that works as well. He said, I'll be there. So he wanted to make sure he was going to be here with you. I've actually asked Coach Jernigan to be here because I want him to be able to say a few words to you also in front of everyone so that you can do that. So, Coach, if you don't mind, come on up. Thank you. Great.
I'd just like to say thank you to Chairman Arizmendiz. I'll get it right here in a minute. I have known him for a long time. I've not been able to follow him because most coaches, we don't get to follow our athletes or anything, but this is an honor and everything to be able to come up here and address the Board of Transportation and Regulations. I am humbled because, first place, I am here, and I am honored because these young ladies and what they did are getting a little bit of the recognition that they so richly have earned. As Mike, and I'll refer to him now as Mike because that's all we always the only person I know him as. I've known Mike for a long time. He was a great athlete and everything. He sells himself short, but anyway. As far as this is concerned, we coaches, sponsors, administrators, we go through training every 2 years to get our CPR, AED certifications. We do it and we know how important it is, but we don't know how important it is. It's amazing until you're put in that situation how real it really is and how valuable this really is until you see a life. And we don't ever hear the stories. That's the other side of it. I have never heard a story of someone until today, and then all of a sudden I've heard a couple of stories just being here this morning of someone's life that was saved. I'm thinking I'm unique, and in a lot of ways I am. For me, I am unique, but in a lot of ways this is an ongoing process and everything. And until you're put under fire, like Deidre and Kristen were, you don't know how you'll act. I think I know how I'll act if I ever had to do it. I hope that I come close to what they did. I hope that I can say, hey, I did my all, I did the best that I could do. But I know we're in the situation that I was in because I was unconscious. I don't have any memory of probably 4 to 15 minutes. something like that. I'm just guessing in that. But I have no memory of any of that except when I got out and I got to asking questions, I wanted to know what took place. And they have filled in a lot of the gaps, most of the gaps of what took place. I didn't know that I had been AED shocked. I did not know they had done chest compressions. I think they said 5 to 6 sets of 30. And none of that. I had no pains going into it. I had no pains when I came out of it. I just collapsed. And then the next thing I'm in the EMS headed to the hospital and everything, and I get there and they tell me what all took place. But I've tried to fill in as much as I can because I want to know the story. It's my story and everything, but they are the ones that made it. Had they not done everything, I promise you, had they not done everything right, I wouldn't be here. If they had stalled, if Deidre, when she grabbed the AED, is that right? Okay, Kristen grabbed the AED. My wife was right. Kristen grabbed the AED. Deidre hightailed it up the little mound right there. It's not a little, it's a pretty good little mound. You got to go up to get up there. Had they hesitated, stalled, or anything, because when the girls got to them, I had probably already been unconscious 2 or 3 minutes. And we all know that we don't have that much time to play with. But they acted heroically. They responded. And as Deidre told me, she said her instincts just took over. And that's amazing to me because I don't think about my instincts taking over. I think I'm going to be thinking clear. I think I'm ready to go do it. But I know the next training that I go through, it will be a lot more serious to me, a lot more, and what I understand, again, listening to the story, all the coaches were up there on that mound. And there was nobody on their cell phone. That's what was amazing to me because we're going through the training, we've got our cell phones, and we're watching out the corner of our eye, but we got most of our concentration right there. And I dare say that any of those coaches will probably be going through training like that again either. But I just would like to say that these 2 young ladies are more than deserving of any recognition and all recognition from my perspective because they are heroes. And I've told lots of people that as far as I'm concerned. So thank you all very much. Thank the board. Thank Mr. Ayers Mendez for inviting me to come up here and say just a few things.
Kristen, we're presenting you the Courage Under Pressure Award presented in recognition to Kristen Bell for your calm, quick-thinking actions that saved the life of Coach Ken Jernigan on October 22nd, 2018. Deidre, would you join us? So like Kristen, also presenting you the Courage Under Pressure Award presented in recognition to Deidre K. Scotter for your calm and quick thinking actions that saved Coach Ken Jernigan's life on October 22nd, 2018. I'm going to call for a quick recess. I want the board to join us real quick and give us a group photo as well as Coach Jernigan as well, and so and you ladies. And so we'll call for a quick recess for our board meeting, and then we'll rejoin you here in just a few moments. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call us back into order, and we'll continue on with the agenda that we have for us today. So as I continue, I will move agenda items around, and I'm going to move a little bit more. So they tell me as presiding officer I can do that. So, you know, we don't get to do many things, so I get to move the agenda around and keep it confusing for everyone. I guess I'll do that. So we will go ahead and consider the approval of our minutes from our previous meeting of July 16th of 2018. Board members, you were sent those in an email for us to read and look over. Do I have a motion to accept those as written?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Fitch. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. So our minutes are approved. Let me put a quick signature so that I don't forget to do that and leave this morning without making those official. Okay. I'll move on to public comment. We did have two individuals that made note that they would like to address this morning. So Mr. Randy Matthews, do you have any comments you would like to make to our board this morning?
Thank you for giving me an opportunity. Just kind of a quick update to the board. The Texas State Athletic Trainers Association has been working very hard after been given a charge from the advisory board and TDLR to work on upgrading and revising our educational standards. It is a process, and we are continuing to do that. We're going to hope to have that finished, hopefully, potentially by your July board meeting, where maybe we'll be able to give you a report if we pass it on through the TSATA board. But we feel like it's going to be a document that the Texas State Athletic Trainers Association will be able to give to the colleges and university athletic trainers and give them a guide for preparing their students to be able to take the licensing exam and be a better educated athletic trainer serving the state of Texas.
Thank you, and I would like to just say I want to thank TSATA and their efforts. This is an organization that is very much walking arm in arm with the betterment of the profession, whether it's through legislative efforts or efforts like this to better educate students to ultimately have a better product and a better individual that's out practicing athletic trainers. As we saw, just recognized two individuals this morning, but we cannot ever have enough education. And I think we can, as a board, we can truly rest on that. We thank you for the efforts and the time that association is working on, and all the members that have put in a lot of time and effort to make some recommendations and things, and we look forward to working arm in arm with you guys.
Chairman Weir, we would like to thank the board for giving us the opportunity to do that. And I would like to especially recognize Dennis Hart, who is kind of my cohort in all of this, co-chairing our task force. And Dennis has put in a lot of hours and has a lot of foresight and is providing a tremendous amount of guidance along the way. So we do appreciate you guys giving us, and ladies, giving us an opportunity to participate in this, and hopefully we'll end up having a great end to what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mark Powell? Mark, give us just a little bit of your background. I know most of the board probably knows, but those out watching on the World Wide Web as to your interactions and things, and I don't know exactly what you're going to say this morning, but anyway, give us just a little bit of the background, and then you can move into what you would like to address the board with and staff.
My name is Mark Powell. I'm the head athletic trainer at Trinity University in San Antonio. I've been there approximately 20 years. I've been a licensed athletic trainer for approximately 20 years. I've been involved with the administration of the State Athletic Trainers Test since it moved to San Antonio probably about 8 or 9 years ago. And I'm here today to voice a little frustration about the way the test is currently being managed. As a site administrator, we've kind of some lack of communication, kind of lack of expectations. It's kind of a general lack of communication about how things need to be run. And so I just wanted to voice some of that today. Most recently, the last test date, there was one person signed up to take the test in San Antonio, and that information doesn't get communicated to us far enough out in advance. Our need to schedule testers and models, that's a complicated process as people are managing calendars, and not knowing in advance how many people you're going to be testing. We've had as many as 25 people in San Antonio, and the variance between the number of people you need to test 25 people versus one person is exponential. And so, as I understand it, there isn't necessarily a cutoff date when someone can sign up to take the practical exam. And so, we might not know until the Thursday or Friday before the test is given on a Sunday, the final number of people that we're going to have show up to take a test on a Sunday. And it just makes the process, very difficult. The other thing that occurs during the scheduling process is the time slots are every hour. And you may end up with one person at a time slot at 9 o'clock, one person in a time slot for 10 o'clock, but then 5 people in a time slot for 11. It just seems to me that those people ought to be evenly spread out, because I have to bring in the number of people necessary to test the largest time slot. So you end up with a lot of people who end up sitting around, either on the front end or on the back end, depending upon when people are signed up. It just seems to me that we either ought to be telling people which time slot they're going to be in, or limiting sign up so that you end up with one person in each time slot before a second position opens up in another time slot, so that we can staff appropriately and accordingly. It just seems to make sense. It also seems like that there ought to be a cutoff prior to, whether it's a week or 2 weeks before the test, so that we can manage accordingly. And there also ought to be, it seems like there ought to be a minimum number of people at a site in order to allow that site to hold a test that time. Fortunately, with us, the one person decided not to take the test on that Sunday, so we didn't bring people in to administer a test to one person. But it just seems like, from a common sense standpoint, we could do some things that make a little bit more sense.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Powell. I appreciate your time and efforts this morning, and what I will say is that when you make changes, and I think a little bit what we're experiencing is a little bit of growing pains or growing change, and which I still feel like the two-step approach that we've gone to in the examination now is a good thing. But as a result of that, our numbers are greatly affected within our practical, because you can't get to that step without being successful in step one. So with that being said, we will certainly take on the comments that you've had, and the examination work group will address these things, I promise you, and look at the best mechanisms for fixing some of the concerns and things that you have. I want to thank you for your efforts of 8 or 10 years, or however long you've been working on this. It's people like yourself that make the practical examination work, and we as a board, we certainly want that portion to work. We value it. We value the information it gives back to us. It helps protect the public in the state of Texas, and as a board, that's what we're sworn to do. So again, I thank you for spending your time this morning, and certainly the many hours over the years, and the time that you spent as a site coordinator, and the efforts that you put in just in managing that, as well as being an examiner. So thank you very much, and we will certainly address these issues.
Thank you. And I would also reiterate the two-step process, I think, it's had a huge impact, I think, for the better. Also changing from having the test, the students taking the test, bringing their own supplies. I think those are 2 huge steps forward for us in the testing process. But again, I agree with you, it is a work in progress, and we seem to be headed in the right direction. Thank you.
Board, anybody have a specific question for Mark? We'll handle it through the work group process, but does anybody have a specific question that we need, that you need
Presiding
answered?
officer, because this is Mary Winston, TDLR, because it's public comment, we can't ask those questions.
Thank you.
There's an opportunity for him to comment, and the board, the work group, as well as our director of E&E and staff have heard you. We've all been writing furiously on how to work with this.
Okay.
But we hear you. Thank you.
That was my inner voice that told me I probably shouldn't say that, but it didn't speak loud enough. I apologize. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think, based on my agenda, we're into our staff reports. And I'm going to move, I have not forgotten training. I know, board, you make sure I don't forget that. But so we will do that toward the end. So licensing division is up first.
Good morning, advisory board members. Leonard Rivas, the licensing manager with the Medical and Health Professions Group.
I'm April Nahawa, Licensing Division.
I provided the licensing statistics in your licensing report for fourth quarter of FY 2018, and then the total number for FY 2018. So far for the first quarter of 2019, we've issued 43 new licenses, 325 renewals, and the current population at the end of the first quarter for FY 2019 is 3,888. And we have 10 temporary licenses for the first quarter FY 2019. I'll be happy to answer any questions about the licensing report, if you have any.
And you don't, your area does not handle the continuing ed portion?
That is correct.
Okay,
That'll
that's
be
under
education and examination.
Okay. Board members, do you have any questions for Leonard?
So is there a separation when it comes to the audit part of?
So what?
I renew.
Okay.
I renew,
Okay.
and then,
I'm sorry. Okay, that's in another portion.
Correct.
The audit portion. So CE.
It's in another division, education and examination.
Sorry.
But
no,
I
I'm
can
with you.
tell.
I mean,
Okay.
I'm trying to get.
I can tell you the
bearings
process if
on
you like.
how the process
Sure.
works.
So our education and examination will mail a letter to the licensee telling them they're selected for audit. When they submit their audit documentation, it comes into the licensing division. We process the CE audit. If all the information is there for the CE audit, then we renew the license.
Not necessarily at the same time.
Correct. And Ray can tell you more about it.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
Members, I'm Ray Pizarro, Director for the Education Examination Division. Currently, the process is, as Leonard was mentioning, we press the button, okay? And we determine the percentage of people we're going to audit for a particular industry. When that happens, the process is there's a notice that go out to the individual, and those individuals need to fess up and bring forward their documentation prior to licensing, renewing their license. What you guys are talking about is either one or two things: extend that notice, because right now the notice is 30 days, and we can extend that notice, or renew those individuals even if they're selected for audit, not check their CEs, but renew them up front and check the CE on the tail end. And if those individuals have failed to successfully complete the correct amount of CE, then action will be taken by the department on those individuals. So those are two different things that can happen. But currently, the process is within the 30 days.
At the renewal point.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Leonard. Okay, Customer Service Division.
Good morning, advisory board members. My name is Tuan Nguyen. I'm the customer service manager for this program. Since the last time we met, we had our peak contacts for the month of July at 871 contacts. Then it slowly decreased to 458 contacts, and then we end up going to an average of 270 contacts per month during the fall season. Most of the contacts were related to login questions, continuing ed, and some application statuses. Other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have for me.
Okay. Any questions, board? Normally, all the reports are all loaded on our computers to us, because I don't ever try to save its paper. I don't ever print it out, but I refer to it on our deals, and I'm not seeing these reports that are on here. So anyway, not the end of the world at all. So thank you very much. Okay, Enforcement Division.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Board members, my name is Robert Reyes. I'm representing the Enforcement Division here this morning. Regarding our numbers for the fiscal year 2018, the total amount of cases opened were 17. Of those opened, all were resolved during the fiscal year. We had no penalties assessed the fiscal year 2018. Looking at this first period of the fiscal year 2019, which we have from September 1, 2018 to November 30th of 2018, we've had 8 cases opened and 6 have been resolved so far. Right now, we have 7 open cases as of Friday, the 14th of January. I do not handle the cases. The health professions, enforcement attorneys that do work on the athletic training cases are Jessica Hurtado and Karen Cox. So they would have more knowledge about the specifics of those cases. We have had new personnel come into the division since the last time the board met in July. Morgan Cumming is a new attorney 3 who works on inspection cases. She came on board December 15th, 2018. Jaime Arabia is also another attorney 3 who works on inspection cases. Came on the same day, December 15th, 2018. And as well, we have Cheryl Wilson, who's our new intake manager, who came in last year as well. With that being said, any other questions that you may have, be happy to answer them for you.
Any questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much for your.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, education examination.
Good morning, Chairman, Weir, Advisory Board members. My name is Rebecca Admas. I'm TDLR's Education Examination Division. And I just have a few items for the group today. I wanted to let everyone listening and everyone in the room know that our practical examination date for the spring, the date has been moved from April 21st to April 14th. And the candidate information bulletin, which I will show you here, has been updated with all of the dates going into 2020 as well. So have everyone consult those to kind of prepare themselves for future examination dates. Mr. Powell, I'd love to get with you after if you have some time. Thank you. And other than that, I don't have much else. We do have, let me find it for you. This last practical administration, we had a total of 21 candidates with about an 81% pass rate. And that's all that I have for you right now.
Okay, just a couple of things that I kind of had, in which Red kind of alluded to, and things that I want to kind of mention. And I think that some of it kind of fell into the timing, the holiday season, and things like that. We had a couple of issues in regards to the audits. I think that we're dealing in the quick era of technology and information age that we're dealing with, and the rapidness of that. I'm very much in favor, and certainly would, we can work through it, very much in favor of moving to a model that Ray just mentioned, that we look at going ahead and renewing an individual and putting them into an audit status. But I do not want to get into a situation that we're keeping someone from working unless they are proven guilty for the fact of, and allow them to get their information in. So kind of an audit after the fact. I feel for the individual that logs in, at the 11th hour on the day that he is to renew, pays his money, and then he or she gets notified that you're under an audit, and within an hour, according to the website, you're in an inefficient or unlicensed status, and an employer that pulls that. And I know many cases in the hospital settings, there are individuals that's their role, is to make sure all of their people are licensed. And so in cases like that, an individual could be suspended from their job and just need some time to be able to produce that information back to us. Plus, that's a step that requires human hands to touch. And it does take a little bit of information, time to process. So I'm very much in favor of looking and considering, and we certainly can do that through work group, as to consider how we can look at changing procedures as to how we handle that. So as a little vote to that, that's my thoughts. Board, if you guys can, Ray, if you want to speak before I let the board.
Sure. Ray Pizarro, Director for Education. Let us, the department, along with General Counsel and licensing, everyone that needs to talk about this, let us look at the process, look at our rules, look at our laws, see how it'll impact the industry and the divisions and the agency. And then when we have some sort of draft or something to bring to you guys, then we can bring it to the work group. And then the work group can meet and we can say, hey, look, this is what we have. Now let's talk about what do we want to do. And that way we have some headway instead of just meeting to meet.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I want to make sure that we have something for the work group to look at, and so that we can have some recommendations to bring back to the advisory board.
Well, I
That's all.
appreciate that, because there's multiple areas that touch this area, between licensing and between and then your particular groups. So yes, many staff involved. So yeah, huddle up and provide us something back. Any thoughts or other comments, board? Any other questions for this section? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, regulatory program, Stuart?
Good morning, board members. Stuart Myrick, Regulatory Program Management. Quick update on what we've been doing. We reviewed the jurisprudence exam, try to update questions to fit rules as they are currently stated. We have 2 new members of our section. Mary Hoffman, who was part of our section, went to another section. Now she's back because she just loves it so much. And Steve Euchre, who you met earlier, has joined our section. They are in charge of some of the other programs within our section. As far as public outreach goes, since we last met, Katie, Bryce, and I were at the SWATA Symposium back in July in Arlington. Had a great time as always. Enjoyed interacting with the attendees there, as we always do, and look forward to this year's symposium in Arlington. We'll be there. We will also be at the Greater Houston Athletic Trainers Society workshop this Saturday in Crosby. Looking forward to being there for that. That's always a fun time to watch students and see the future of the athletic training profession develop there. As far as any other, we're welcome. We're happy to oblige any other outreach opportunities. So if anybody has one that they would like to see us there, have them contact me, and I'm be happy to set up those arrangements. As far as a section update, as you may have received, we do a quarterly newsletter called the Health Monitor, and so the 5th issue of that went out to subscribers in early December. Contains a lot of articles about all the different professions within medical and health professions, including athletic trainers. If anybody has ideas for stories, especially concerning athletic trainers, have them contact me, and I'll be happy to put something together. Other than that, if you have any questions, let me know.
Well, certainly our two ladies that we recognized earlier, that's prime information
Absolutely.
to put into that. And
I actually remember licensing Kristen back in 2015.
Well, good.
I don't know why the name stood out to me, but it was good. And of course, being a Gladewater Bear, I'm happy for my Lobos.
And also, thank you, Stuart, for and staff that have come to our meetings. Certainly, I think having your face there present at those meetings is really big, and it really bridges that gap. This is not just an agency in Austin that they only hear from when they want money or there's an issue, that they're there or you guys are there to help them answer questions and be there for them arm in arm. So thank you for your efforts there. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. I always enjoy sitting around with you guys, if nothing else, just to get some good football stories.
Any questions, comments, other board members for Stuart in his area? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, executive office?
That'd be me. Carla James, TDLR. First of all, I'm not sure I've had the pleasure of attending one of y'all's meetings, so thank you for your service to the state of Texas. We appreciate your highly unpaid jobs that you do for us. So I know that you all probably received an update on our strategic plan during your last meeting. I don't have anything to share at this time for that. Legislative session started last Tuesday, so we anticipate seeing some movement on some of the items in that strategic plan, but it's way too early to tell at this point, not even a week in. We'll be providing a full update to the board after session has completed. The other thing that I need to give you an update on is our legislative appropriations request. Every agency is required every 2 years to submit a budget request to the legislature. We did so in August. Some of the highlights of that document are a request for exceptional items. The agency realized a 4% budget cut during the last session, which was requested by the legislature, and that amounted to 14 full-time equivalent positions for the agency. We're requesting half of that back at this time. We are doing our job, but we're not doing it to our TDLR standards. So we're requesting some of those humans and funding to pay their salaries to get us back where we feel like we belong and providing customer service to our 800,000 licensees in Texas. The other items that we are requesting back is a human trafficking team. The governor's office, the attorney general's office, and new Speaker Bonin have provided that the state of Texas needs to be very diligent when it comes to human trafficking, and we are in a unique position here at TDLR in that we have authority to go into businesses and conduct our inspections as part of our enabling statute. And we sometimes see things that don't fit, especially in a couple of our industries. So we have requested resources to hire additional staff to gather that information, be experts in that field. We do not arrest people. I want to be real clear about that. The information that we find out in the locations that we go to is forwarded to local law enforcement immediately. But we help bridge that gap between someone who's just going to a facility and someone who's inspecting a facility. So we feel like that's important in helping push forward the initiative set forth by the governor. And then finally, what a lot of our licensees and the general populace don't see when they look at our website is that we are actually working on the back end with 9 disparate licensing systems. So everyone that works at TDLR that provides customer service has to get in and use and become proficient in 9 different licensing systems. And we have those licensing systems because of the different programs that have come to us over the years. We are requesting a small amount of money, or actually just authority to use the money that we bring in, to create a system that will allow us to move forward. Some of these systems that we're using predate my time on Earth, which is not a small amount of years. So we feel like it's really important for us to move forward, especially as the legislature trusts us with new programs. So those are the highlights of what we're requesting. Again, we just started session. Budget hearings have not begun. We don't even know who's going to be on the committees yet, but as we move forward, we will follow this process through and have an update for you after session, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
And if you could, if there's anything that is big in regards to athletic trainers that you see coming down, if you could, you know, convey that to us if you can through information, just to give us heads up so that we're not blindsided as much as possible either
Sure.
as board members.
We'd be happy to do so, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe we keep a running list on our website, which will go up later during session, of the things that we're following.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Question, comments from other board members on the executive report? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate it. I think that we're into our training. So, Molly, I think you're up first.
Good morning. I'm Molly Feudel, Assistant General Counsel with the TDLR's Office of General Counsel. I'll be doing the training this morning. We are going to cover the Open Meetings Act, the Administrative Procedure Act, and the Public Information Act. So the common thread running through all three of these in the presentation today is going to be open government, sunshine on government, so you'll be seeing a lot of that. We'll start with the Open Meetings Act. The purpose is to ensure open and transparent government. It requires meetings of governmental bodies to be open to the public and to be preceded by notice, public notice of the time, place, and subject matter of the meeting. The provisions of the Act are mandatory and are liberally construed in favor of open government. So we'll start with one of the first key concepts, a quorum. A quorum is a majority of the members of the advisory board as fixed by rule or statute. So you have 5 members, 3 is a quorum. A quorum must be present in order to take official action, such as voting. If a quorum is not present, you can meet, you can talk about what you'd like to talk about, but you can't take any official action. Second key concept is deliberation. It's a verbal exchange during a meeting between a quorum of a governmental body or between a quorum of a governmental body and another person concerning an issue within the jurisdiction of the governmental body or any public business. So a second key concept is a meeting. A meeting occurs anytime a quorum of the governmental body engages in a deliberation regarding public business or public policy over which the governmental body has supervision or control, or anytime the body takes formal action. So taking formal action, that would be like a vote. And as far as the deliberation goes, an example of this, a meeting that would have to be preceded by notice would be if 3 of you got together to talk about certain rule changes that you think might be necessary, that would be a meeting that we'd have to give notice to the public of that occurring so they could decide whether or not they wanted to come and attend. An example of something that would not be a meeting is if 3 of you got together to discuss how your holidays went, how your families were doing. That's not public business, so it doesn't count as a meeting. We don't have to publish an agenda for that. Next concept is notice. This is often called the agenda. The Open Meetings Act requires written notice of the date, time, place, and subject of each meeting held. TDLR staff goes ahead and publishes this in the form of the agenda. It's filed with the Texas Secretary of State at least 7 days prior to a meeting and must be posted online by TDLR and the Secretary of State. The board or committee may not engage in discussions about a subject not included on the agenda. And this is going to be one of those few times when you hear from me or Mary Winston or somebody from that table, just kind of reminding you that we have to stick to what's on the agenda because it's easy to wander off track. So a question that often comes up is, what about social functions, conventions, and workshops? So keeping in mind that a meeting occurs when and wherever a quorum of a governmental body engages in the discussion about public business, can members ever meet in an informal setting without violating the act? And the answer is yes. members are free to engage in a conversation that is incidental to the event. So for example, if you're at a convention and there's a presentation that's related to your profession, you can talk about what's going on in that, what's presented in that presentation, and it will not be a meeting under the Open Meetings Act. However, if a quorum of members is present and you engage in a discussion about board or committee business that's not incidental, or if you try to take formal action, for example, voting, that is a meeting that has to be required or has to be preceded by notice to the public and an agenda, so you don't want to do that. Some of the key points to remember: always be aware of any situation occurring outside of a properly noticed meeting in which a quorum of members is present, and that's safe to say anytime you're outside of this room and 3 or more of you are there. Do not engage in substantive conversations relating to board or committee business or policy when a quorum is present and you're outside of an officially noticed or scheduled meeting, and be aware of the walking quorum, which you might be asking, what's a walking quorum? That's our next slide. A walking quorum is when fewer than a quorum of members engage in discussion about official business and then communicate those discussions to other members. So while fewer than a quorum participate in the first communication, the subsequent communications with the other members will result in a quorum discussing official business outside of a public meeting. So an example, on a 5-member advisory board, such as your board, if 2 of you talk over the phone or exchange emails talking about an upcoming rule change, and you exchange some of the research that you've done, and then one of you forwards some of those emails or talks about those discussions to a 3rd board member, that is now a walking quorum, because 3 of you, a quorum, have participated in that discussion even though it didn't all take place at the same time. That's a walking quorum, and that is a violation of the Open Meetings Act. So keep in mind, walking quorums can occur in a lot of different settings. Conference calls, video conferences, hallway discussions, emails, text messages, other new technologies such as social media. One thing that that could happen is if somebody posted something on their social media account, if one of you said something like, we're looking at this on the advisory board, what do you guys think? And then 2 more advisory board members look at that post, that is then a walking quorum, because 3 of you have engaged in communications about board business. So I would refrain from doing that. So some of the best practices to avoid the walking quorum: don't meet in small groups, discuss board or committee business, and then communicate those discussions to other members. Anytime you're outside of this room, unless you're on a work group, just don't talk about it. Don't send emails or text messages to a quorum of members regarding official business, even if each email is addressed and sent separately. That still counts. Don't create posts on social media about board business where a likelihood exists that a quorum of members could view those discussions. And don't ask a quorum of members, even on an individual basis, going up to people one by one for feedback. Hey, what do you think about this issue? That's sometimes called polling. You'll hear that term. And that is essentially conducting an informal vote before the vote. The board or committee is limited to discussing the specific items on the agenda. And again, that is to give the public an opportunity to know what will be discussed. During the public comment period, members of the public are given an opportunity to speak, and the presiding officer may set reasonable limits, for example, a time limit. That's common. A member of the public or a member of the board may raise a subject that has not been included in the agenda. However, any further discussion is going to be limited to a proposal to place that subject on a future meeting agenda. Some more guidelines. Limit your discussions to the specific agenda items contained in the posting filed with the Secretary of State. Avoid allowing those discussions to wander a little too much from what has been posted on that agenda. Don't respond to or discuss issues that are raised under public comment but are not actually on the agenda. And when we get to that meeting, or excuse me, that agenda item at the end of the meeting, talking about future things that you would like to see on the agenda, be sure to communicate that to staff. You can also communicate those to staff outside of the meeting so that we can place those on the agenda for the next meeting. So it wouldn't be much of a law if there weren't some penalties. There are civil remedies. Any interested person, including the media, can petition the courts to stop actions taken in violation of the Act. And actions taken in violation of the Open Meetings Act are voidable. There are also criminal penalties. Members who knowingly conspire to circumvent the Act are subject to misdemeanor criminal penalties. The penalties are a fine of $100 to $500, confinement in county jail for 1 to 6 months, or both. This is relatively rare, but you don't want to be that test case. Some more best practices. Avoid communications that involve a quorum of board or committee members about official business outside of a properly noticed meeting. And during meetings, confine discussion to items that are specifically posted on the agenda. If you want some further information on the Open Meetings Act, here are some resources for you. The first one is a link to a video that the Attorney General has made regarding open meetings. I would recommend that. The Attorney General also has a handbook about open meetings that could possibly answer some questions you might have. If you want to look at the text of the statute itself, it's at Chapter 551 of the Government Code, and you've also got the phone number for the General Counsel's office. You can call that number and ask for myself. So we'll move on to the Administrative Procedure Act. And this is going to do with rulemaking for you. The purpose of the APA, that's what we generally call it, is to establish minimum standards of uniform practice and procedure for state agencies and to provide for public participation during that rulemaking process. So the APA has a definition of a rule. A rule is a statement made by a state agency that implements, interprets, or prescribes law or policy or describes the procedure or practice requirements of a state agency. It's a statement of general applicability, meaning it applies to everybody. So a good way to think about rules in relation to the statute is a statute is just a bare bones framework, and the rules fill in all the details. So when we're talking about rules here, we're also talking about the amendment or repeal of an existing rule. And a rule does not relate to internal management or organization of a state agency. Some of the sources for rulemaking: legislative changes. We'll probably be doing some bill implementation after the session is up. Advisory board work groups, a discussion with the advisory board, staff, also the 4-year rule review, which we'll be talking about a little bit later, and a rule petition. So any interested person can submit a rule petition to a state agency, essentially requesting the adoption of a rule. And an interested person is anyone who's a Texas resident, a business entity in Texas, a governmental subdivision in Texas, or a public or private organization that's not a state agency, but is located in Texas. So this is our rulemaking process. Don't feel like you have to memorize all of this. But basically, the idea for a rule comes about from whatever source. The drafting and the review of rules happens usually with TDLR staff and maybe in consultation with a work group. Those rules are sent to you, the advisory board, for consideration. You will look at them and you will vote on whether or not you want to publish them or make some changes. If you vote to publish them, they are filed with the Texas Register. The public has 30 days to comment. We then review those comments and recommend any changes based on those, send the rules back to you. You look at those, you look at the comments, and you make a recommendation to the commission. The commission then votes, they look at the comments and look at your recommendation, and they vote on what they would like to do, whether to make any changes or to adopt the rules as they come. That adoption is filed with the Texas Register, and those rules become effective 20 days later. We also have the rule review process. This is a mandatory process that the APA requires every 4 years. Every 4 years, We do it in 2 phases. In the first phase, we publish a notice of intent to review to let the public know we're reviewing these rules. Please send us any comments that you have. They have 30 days to comment. We look at those comments and make a recommendation to the commission. Usually that recommendation is to readopt the rules because usually those rules are still necessary. There's still a statute there that requires rules to be in place. The commission reviews the rules and the comments and may readopt. And you will be presented with any comments. And at this point at phase 2, we look at the rules, rule by rule, and look at any changes that we believe or that you believe need to be made. Some resources for rulemaking. The first one is a handbook from the Attorney General, all about the Administrative Procedure Act. The second is various statutes that have to do with rulemaking. The third, Secretary of State website. You can look at the Texas Register, which is where all the rule adoptions and proposals are published, and also the Texas Administrative Code, where our rules reside. And then the last is our phone number for the General Counsel's office. Okay, finally, we are at the Public Information Act, which is also known as the Open Records Act. So the Public Information Act is intended to allow each person information about the affairs of government and the official acts of public officials and employees. So again, sunshine on government. The Act makes all documents, records, and other information relating to official business open to the public with some exceptions. Public information, and this is information that could go out if somebody requests it, includes any electronic communication created, transmitted, received, or maintained on any device if it's in connection with official business. So that any device, that could include a personal cell phone. If we got a Public Information Act request for some information that happens to be on your cell phone, just because it's on your personal cell phone doesn't mean that that you can't disclose it. That would have to be disclosed. So as a general rule of practice, most people don't do any official communication on their cell phones with texts or emails. And the Public Information Act should be construed liberally in favor of granting requests for information. So if we receive if you receive a request that looks like it could possibly be an open records request, please forward that to us as soon as possible. We'll take care of it. Conversely, if we request information from you, please respond to us as soon as you can. We have a tight turnaround on when we have to get that information back out. It's approximately 10 days, 10 business days, to either provide that or to file a brief with the Attorney General stating that we would like to withhold that information. And we can't ask somebody why they want the records. We can only ask for clarifications. Some of the exceptions to disclosure, dates of birth, personal email addresses, certain education documents, HIPAA information, medical records, that kind of thing. That is the kind of thing that we must redact or withhold from an open records request. So some further resources. Again, the Attorney General has created a video on open records. There's also the handbook that they've written about open records, and the statute itself is in Chapter 552 of the Government Code. You can also call our office phone number, and we have the open records email address, which is staffed by all of our open records personnel. That's it from me, unless you have any questions.
Molly, I do have one question. Institutional or university pass rates on the examination. X university has this pass rate that is public information and can be posted, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just obviously not the individual's grade.
I believe that's correct, yes.
All right. Any other questions for Molly in regards to our training for the morning? Thank you, Molly. Appreciate that.
Chairman, I think you could probably see out of this that really, when you leave here, you just can't talk to anybody.
Exactly.
So
Just
yeah.
gag order.
Exactly.
Understand.
I got
Thank
that
you.
Mr. Chairman, Carla James, TDLR. Going back to my report real quickly, we do have the bills already posted on our website, so I'll ask Christine to send those to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, Board, I think we're to letter H, if I'm not mistaken here. So do you have any agenda items right now that you want to make sure that's on the agenda for our next board meeting?
I'd like to put heat illness on the agenda.
May I ask him a question in regards to elaboration as to the direction that he wants to go?
Well, I think we just need to, the debate about rectal thermometers is raging in high schools and colleges, and I think we just need to get get it out in the public, the recommendations, and I don't know how to do that, so I guess the way to do it is put it on the agenda and discuss it.
Okay, all right.
If we could get a little bit of clarity on that, because I'm not sure if it's a work group issue, just a general discussion amongst, and this probably because I haven't been to one of your advisory board meetings, but, and maybe Mary can provide some clarity on it, but it seems like a very open-ended discussion unless there's something specific.
One of the concerns I think that Dr. Schmidt is raising, particularly in the high school, the standard of care in regards to dealing with a heat illness is obtaining a rectal temp. But because you're dealing with that in a minor, it is, it's a slippery slope. Standard of care is irregardless is not a term, is regardless is the right term, of the case, that is the standard of care to be utilized. In many cases, an individual may be unconscious anyway and is not even able to give verbal consent, but that's still, that procedure is done, and it's done to, that is the most accurate body temp, and guidelines tell us to cool before transporting, cool an individual down prior to transport, and literally that temperature is observed by a monitor with a probe inserted. I won't go any further than that. But that temperature is monitored until that optimal temperature is obtained, and then typically transport occurs. But athletic trainers are, because of the climate that we're in right now, are concerned in regards to, could they potentially lose their job, lose their license by performing a standard of care in regards to doing this. And am I correct?
Exactly. I mean,
Okay.
the question is, I guess the question I have for y'all is, there's clear scientific documentation that that's standard of care. There are school boards and athletic directors who are very concerned about allowing their athletic trainers to use the rectal thermometer, but it's standard of care. If you don't use it and somebody dies, you are going to get sued. And so I guess one of the questions is, could we make a rule that required rectal thermometers to be at least available to the athletic trainers of the state of Texas when dealing with heat illness?
Mary Winston, TDLR, and I see Heather heading this way. Standard of Care Work Group, we have Mr. Ware and Ms. Webb, and I don't think that this has been touched on yet in a work group setting. To know that, I do know that that is that method of measuring the temperature is the most accurate, and I do think that's something that the work group can meet and discuss, as well as having some input, even if it's, because we can't have a quorum, documentation sent into the work group and to the advisory boards to have medical terminology and technology inserted in whatever decision that the work group comes up with. Mr. Ware, Ms. Webb, and I'll let Heather.
Mary said that much better than I did. Heather Muir. I would recommend that you refer that to the Standard of Care Work Group for them to work on and meet before the next meeting and come up with some guidance for the advisory board to look at.
Okay.
And Stuart will set that up with that work group.
Okay.
And Mary Winston again, and Molly Fudel, the Assistant General Counsel for the program, will have input because she does write the rules for this program.
Yes.
Doesn't that go over to a bigger issue of protection for providing the standard of care? Not just rectal temps like we're discussing, but overall. I mean, if there's a standard of care, isn't that, whereas an advisory board, we need to be discussing and looking at to make a protective comment / whatever, you know what I'm saying? Because it's more than just.
I agree, and I think, I don't know that we're to the level of individual rules like this. It may be an education effort that we want as a board to have an educational document that is put in writing that comes and supported by our board. So we'll address those best ways, best practices, but because again, like Dr. Smith has said, if in those types of cases in our litigious society in which we're in, athletic trainers, that's the standard the athletic trainer is going to be held to. So, you know, if other expert witnesses are going to come in, they're going to be asked that question: did you perform this? And it should be 12 out of 12 athletic trainers should say, yes, we would do that. Because again, it's a negligible fact that if you did not. And regardless of age, the standard of care is the standard of care. And so we'll address that through work group and figure out the best ways that we need to handle it in regards to our working operations. Okay?
Stuart will reach out and schedule that with the work group, send y'all some dates.
Okay. Thank you very much, Heather.
And thank you for the information. I learned something new today.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
along that same line, when that comes up, I'm wondering if there needs to be, because that presents, I believe, a very interesting dilemma for athletic trainers from an ethical side and litigious side about, as you talked about, in this litigious society we're currently in and the way that that whole scope is being viewed. Are there other items that would fall on that same line of being able to get using a rectal thermometer that would fall in that? Because I think we're gonna have to find there's gotta be some happy medium where the athletic trainers are not held liable for not doing what is the normal standard of care, because you've got this other side of saying, no, I don't want you to do that to my child. There's gotta be some happy medium in there, and I don't know what that might be, but I'm trying to figure out if there's some other, above just the rectal thermometer usage, other things above that would probably be lumped in together as being one of those items.
Well, I think one of the things we can start with in a work group situation is looking at the national position statements that are going to be supported by emergency physicians and various medical specialties that are going to guide us that way. And I think that it's, you know, it's pretty black and white, cut and dried. And there's multiple topics. The heat illness is one of them. Obviously, we know the concussion aspect of things and the management of those things. So the National Trade Association has multiple position statements on multiple things. So we have a starting point as to, you know, a support mechanism to work from in regards to that.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think it's just getting the awareness out to the school boards and to athletic directors, people who may oversee athletic trainers, that this is the standard of care. Yeah.
Okay.
And, excuse me, Carla James, TDLR. Our staff will do some research prior to the work group meeting. If you all have any information about national associations, what other states are doing, if you're willing to share that with us, we'll take it. But I think I'm vicariously directing Stuart through my discussion right now on doing some research for other states, see what's happening around the nation.
Well, Stuart should be familiar with those entities, and in which if he's not, then we on the outside, we can give him some guidance to some areas to look for.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Smith, for bringing that to our attention. Any other items that you want to make sure? There may be some things that, certainly the agenda items doesn't stop here today. So obviously, once we set a meeting, you guys can, if you come up with something, send an email to staff and that can be discussed and touch base with Molly in regards to adding an agenda item. Certainly, there may be some things that come from work groups that are going to operate between now and that time. So certainly those things could be added as well. I know education and things are things working in the backgrounds in regards to those things. So any other agenda items to put on the record? Okay. Our next board meeting, in the previous times, we've kind of met late April, early May. So is that kind of a good timing in regards to board? And then we've typically met again in July, somewhere around about the third week, right in front of the regional trade meeting. So
Chairman Carla James, I can't even talk. We'd like to do it after session is over so we can provide you full updates on what's occurred during the legislative session.
Okay.
So if we could wait to have that spring meeting until a June timeframe, I think you'll get some more important information from us rather than just having it a few months from now.
Okay. Board, is July like a mid-July? Is that?
We'll poll
Okay,
y'all
we'll
and
do
find out
that.
if a June or July timeframe, understanding
have-
that school is a big factor in this.
Sure. If we have other items, obviously, if we have an urgent item that comes up that's outside of the session that we need to come together, we certainly reserve the right to be able to do
Absolutely.
that and can do that towards the end of the school year.
Absolutely.
Something like that. Is
And
that
Mary-
okay, Board?
Mary Winston, TDLR. Standard of care work group. You all brought up some issues, and what's that old saying about how you eat an elephant one bite at a time?
Right.
As you mentioned the one issue, and Red brought forth other issues, so this gives that work group time and staff time to do some research and to have a couple of meetings
Okay.
to come up with something. So, and if another topic arises from those meetings, we'll get that in there as well. So this does, just because we're not having a meeting until the summer, does not mean that we are all not working, including the board, and
Exactly.
particularly those work groups, so.
And I understand you
yeah.
guys are going to be busy with session as well, so I understand that we don't want just time that's involved in a meeting when you've got session business you're trying to stay up with as well. So, okay. Any other items for discussion before we adjourn? Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Dr. Smith moves to adjourn our meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Our meeting is adjourned.